Need for Speed. The games during this era is what sets some of us up as racing fans. The nostalgia, the atmosphere, the amazing gameplay and soundtrack were all present in these games, and today we're going to take a little trip into the past and see how it all started for Need for Speed. Starting it off with the very first game, Need for Speed 1. It's the first entry in the series, and it did have a few versions that varied from one another. I tried both the 3DO and also the PS1 version just to see how they are. The 3DO version got released in 1994. It's a very simple arcade game with 3 tracks to play on and 8 cars to choose in total, with a lot of historical facts around the cars. If you've never heard of them or seen some of these cars, you can go into the car showcase and it will tell you a little bit about its history for each manufacturer in the game. What cars they have produced so far, what engines they use. Basically heaven for car nerds that like to learn something new. The cars you have are the Lamborghini Diablo, Ferrari Testarossa, Dodge Viper, Corvette, Honda NSX, Mazda RX-7, and a Toyota Supra. Alongside the cars, you have the lovely X-Man who you can race against in head-to-head, and he usually has some nice words of encouragement.
Oh, what's wrong? Does your widow waste car driver want to go home? Full throttle, red lining, muffler burning, turbocharging, paint peeling, blistering son of a gun! Welcome to the Wall of Fame! First to the finish and to the victor the spoils. It's all under the hood, man, and you took it over the line, baby, way ahead. Way ahead!
To be honest, I love these cutscenes so much, and there's quite a bit of cutscenes that you can get from him.
On the road and in your face. What a drive. What a driver. All the scale, all the thrill. Hard driving, man. You blow me away. Yeah, the thrill of this finish line is just the start, man. You are bound for glory with your foot to the floor, baby. Woo!
Now, in terms of gameplay, it felt a little bit slow-paced, I would say. Even when you are driving over 100 miles per hour, the game still feels rather slow. I like the little details they had here, like if you want to see what's behind you, you have to be in first person and look at the rear view mirror in the cockpit. The way the menus were simply designed and etc. all make for a short but fun experience. Now moving on to the PS1 version of the game, Road and Track presents Need for Speed. This version of the game added more improvements compared to the 3DO version. For one, you had a lot more tracks to play around with, up to 6 in total. The menus looked different as well. The car showcase again looked amazing for anyone interested in learning a thing or two about these beauties, and of course graphically it looks a bit improved, and it feels a lot faster than the 3DO version. Handling as well was a little different to get used to, with some being a bit too stiff to maneuver. The main objective is to beat the tournament mode to unlock the bonus cars and tracks, but there was one problem. The AI was really damn tough in this game. From the very first race you couldn't do a single mistake anywhere, otherwise you would lose any chance of catching up to the opponents. I kept trying, but the best I could achieve in here was a second place once. So I used the cheats to unlock the hidden track, which is called Las Vegas, a high-speed circuit with the night lights shining on you as you're driving. A cool feature the game had was if you hold R1 you could try a rally version of a track you raced on. The handling was still the same for the most part. It's mostly in bigger corners you might lose the car, but overall it's a fun mode. By the way, make sure your car fully stops after you finish. The game is scripted to fully close the race once your car stops, so if it doesn't, you might be stuck here for a while. One more thing to mention about these older games is how amazing the soundtracks were in them. With the first Need for Speed game doing well, the studio decided to make another game, but this time it would be only filled with skylines. Thus we got Need for Speed Skyline Memorial, and one main difference you can tell in this game, except the cars, is the way the difficulty is much easier in this game. Back in the 90s, the main reason they made these games so difficult in Europe and America was because of game rentals. Game rentals are illegal in Japan, and US companies didn't want people beating the game in a single rental, so they made made many of them much harder to encourage purchases. So when playing this, it was much more relaxing. It has the same concept as the first game, which is to beat the tournaments to unlock the bonus stuff, while only using 8 different Skylines, and you could win the R390 GT1, which is the only one to have finished in the 1997 Le Mans event, while the others had mechanical issues during it. Same as the first game, you had a showcase for each of these cars, but all were done in Japanese. Handling these cars feels really great, much less stiff than before, and lets you turn more and carry more speeds into corners. As for the rest of the game, it plays out vastly the same as the original, so we can slowly move on to the second game in the series. Next game in the series was Need for Speed 2, and right off the bat you got this amazing song getting you pumped and excited to hop into some events. Need for Speed 2 was released on April 18th, 1997, and it's set off to improve the overall package of the first game and make it into something new and fresh. We got some new racetracks added into here, from snowy mountain tracks, tropical scenery, cave explorations, and a lot more, with a new selection of cars at our disposal. More concept cars were introduced in here, more showcases to give information on these unique looking models. The atmosphere in this game is fantastic. There are so many unique and fun looking racetracks in here. The mountains, highway section. You can drive inside of a Hollywood studio set as a bonus track. You can also play around with track settings, choosing if you want it to be mirrored, do you want it rain, and play it the way you want to. The main modes you need to complete in this game is the tournament and knockout events to unlock some extra stuff. Nothing too complicating, just pick whatever car you fancy to go at and try and win. One thing that I absolutely love in this game is the cheat codes. This game had such a fun variety of cheats to try and play around with. Like, you can drive as a T-Rex, drive as a beer box, a crate, a newsstand, school bus, even a log. The list goes on and on. You can also enable a cheat to turn the races into slot car events. Why don't we have anything like this nowadays? Just simple cheats like these to mess around with. The handling can be a little bit tricky at times. Some cars take a while to turn to where you want them to, and on tracks where there's a lot of turns to be done, it can be a little bit frustrating. The physics are definitely interesting. You mess up at big speeds, you're bound to be flipping around for days till you get reset. Same goes for the AI in some of these tracks. Overall, it's a definitive improvement over the first game. Lots more stuff added to this game, cars to play around with, and cheats to have fun with. Now it's time for the third installment into the series. In 1998, the third Need for Speed was released, going for a different approach to its previous title. Here we were introduced to the cops and hot pursuit modes, where you could play as a cop and bust other racers, or reverse the roles and be the one trying to get away from the cops, giving the full game the name Hot Pursuit 3. The objective is the same as previous games, try and complete the tournament mode and also knockout events. The PS1 version of the game was made by EA Canada, who adopted the handling model from Need for Speed 2 and polished it around to give a nice experience while playing the game. The menus were very simplistic, and I like the small details they added, like when you start an event, the needle goes to the top, and during the races you could see the needle on top of the screen. And like the previous games, you had a showcase menu for each manufacturer, seeing all of the cars they've made in the past and etc. The game also introduced some beautiful looking tracks like Rocky Pass, Atlantica, Aquatica. Like, you get to drive under an aquarium. How cool is that? There's also hidden tracks that you can enable with cheat codes like Scorpio 7, which is quite literally underwater. The Space Racetrack, which is, well, in space. Autocross, in which you basically are the size of an ant driving around someone's garden. And the Caverns, which is full of pillars everywhere, and you need to be precise on your driving to not smash into one of them. You even have a kids room in here full of toys placed around and some nice drawings lying around. Overall, I think it was a very fun version of the game, and if you have the PS1 emulator set up, it's a no-brainer to try this game out. Now let's move on to the PC version, which was made by EA Seattle. The PC version went for more of a balance between sim and arcade to please the fans. The menus here looks very simple, and it would make a reappearance in high-stakes PC version. In this version, you could also play as a cop. You will be given a cop car, and once you start your lights up, your objective would be to pin down the suspect and bust them, and you do that until everyone is busted in the race. The cars weren't too resilient, so you could easily spin them out and bust them. It also had some nice little details, like for example, if you drive off-road, these little rocks box with slingshot to your windshield, and you can see some damage on it. And it contains a lot of stuff that the PS1 had, like tournaments and knockouts, so for the most part, it plays the same as the PS1 version. It's a fun experience, one you can spend a couple hours playing before wanting to change it up to another game, like Need for Speed High Stakes. Need for Speed High Stakes was released in 1999 on PC by EA Seattle and on the PS1 by EA Canada. Right off the bat, when you boot up the game, you can notice the menus look a bit similar to the previous game, but with new stuff on top of it. The introduction of new cars, introduction of a damage system. Each race you could damage your car if you drove it too recklessly, and once it's broken, you have to spend money to fix it up. Sometimes the damages wouldn't cost a lot, but with some cars, you better be ready to fork up the cash when necessary, because the bills only go higher and higher with each car class you drive. I like the system because it would make you drive a little bit more carefully, having that constant repair bill hanging over your head. You can't mention High Stakes without mentioning the amazing soundtrack this game has. Incredible stuff back in the day. So the way you would progress in this game is, first of all, by buying yourself a starter car, and afterwards you compete in these tournaments like in the previous games. But there's a lot of them in this game, and you don't get cars for free. You need to purchase them in order to even qualify for some of the tournaments. You can also upgrade your cars from level 1 to level 3 and increase the performance drastically in some cars. And once you've completed all of them, you have successfully finished the game. They also played around with the cop modes from Hop Shoot 3 and made them a little better. You could spawn in backup units, roadblocks to help you out. You can even switch between cop cars at any point. So if one is close to the finish or further away, you can switch into his car and continue the chase. Handling in the PC version is very grippy. Most of the time I didn't even need to let go of the gas. I was able to go full speed pretty much everywhere. You also have the return of the knockout events from the previous games, and you're able to manually set how each race is going to be like. What weather you want, do you want it to be mirrored or not, and etc. And you can have some proper fun playing around with these modes. You can even play online in this game, which I made a video about a long time ago if you wish to check it out. As for the PS1 version, it was developed by EA Canada, and it has a different look and feel compared to the PC version. The menus, for example, were very similar to PC, just more simplified. But where it really changes at is the handling. Here it feels like they wanted to go for more of a realistic approach, like the car doesn't slide around every corner. You have to judge it a bit more how much you can push it in corners. More simcade-ish handling. Once you get used to it, it is fun to drive around. One big thing that you notice in this version is how aggressive the cops are. In some ways, these cops feel a lot tougher than the cops you see in Most Wanted. They will stay glued to you for a long time, hauling roadblocks to stop you, as well as spiked roadblocks. And once you hit these roadblocks, you lose complete control over the car and get fined instantly. To be honest, even though we're struggling to outrun them, a part of me enjoyed these cop chases. Like nowadays, one thing you mostly hear from the newer games is that the cops are super weak and easy to dodge. So to see them tough in these older games is a breath of fresh air, sort of. Also, a cool little feature is that you can enable the local cops in these events. So if you want to be screamed at by French, German, or British cops, you can do that. I should also mention the version that I played of this game was also a modded version called Complete Edition. It combines the cars from all regions and adds new content, so that's why you see a GTR in the footage as well. One thing that is different here compared to the PC is that your car automatically gets fixed at the end of every race, and you do get a bonus if you drive perfectly without damaging your car. Visually, it also looks a lot better. The colors are great and it has amazing lighting, giving such a relaxing feeling while driving around these tracks. You got special events in here that require a certain car in order to do them, with varying effects like reverse or mirrored layouts, traffic, nighttime, weather changes, and etc. There was also a cool multiplayer feature this game had. Two players could bet their cars on their memory cards, and the loser would lose their car permanently from the memory card. Overall, it's a really fun experience this game offers. The only negative I sort of had is that it can be a bit grindy unless you're willing to sell some of the cars to compete in other tournaments. I enabled a money cheat just so I could do most of them without that worry, but for casual players, I imagine it could be a little bit inconvenient. And that leaves us with the last game from this era, Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed. Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed was released in the year 2000. You could tell because they sold copies where it was called Porsche 2000. There were two studios that handled these games. You had the PC version from EA Canada and the PS1 version from Eden Games, who at the time were known for the V-Rally games, and later in life were well known for the Test Drive Unlimited games. How did they handle the PS1 version of this game? So you have both a factory driver mode and evolution mode to play around with. In factory mode, you join Porsche as a test driver and work your way up to the highest role, which is Ace Test Driver. Surprisingly here, it is very short. It took less than an hour to fully complete. Most of these challenges involves going around cones as quick as possible, going from point A to point B as fast as possible, and once you are done there, you're free to play around in evolution mode. Here you start from the 1950s era, and you have to complete tournaments in order to unlock the other eras, which is the golden and modern era. A cool detail they had here was trying to match the locations and music for the eras. Like in the 1950s, you could notice some classical music and the cities were still just developing. You come to the 1970s, you can notice visually the areas have much more stuff added to them. More lights, buildings, and the music changes afterwards, and same in the modern era. One little negative I had here was that it didn't have a lot of music choices. Like in the classic era, you would hear the same song many times, and in the golden era, the same 3 songs would always play. Now as for the driving in this game, it is very arcadey, and honestly it feels like any car you drive is pretty much the same, whether it's an old Porsche or a brand new one. They all just handle the same. Feels like driving an all-wheel drive car, but the car is supposed to be a rear-wheel drive. One thing they added here was the ability to drive around in free roam and explore the maps. You could also get into chases during it, and if you get busted, you have to pay a fine. In evolution mode, there's like 8 tracks per 3 eras. Overall, I think it's okay-ish, but definitely was a bit annoying with the soundtrack here being on loop for majority of the time. What about the PC version? This is where everything changes. The PC version just knocks it out of the park. The UI and music just flesh out the game in seconds, getting you excited to see what it has to offer. Like the PS1 version, you have both a factory driver mode and evolution mode to play around with. This time, however, the factory mode would take longer to complete, which I didn't mind since you get to experience driving so many different Porsches, and driving them here was pretty fun. The handling feels like it's in the middle between sim and arcade handling, kind of similar to PS1 high stakes handling. You have a lot more tests to do as a driver, with the same goal of reaching the Ace Test Driver role. Some of these are a bit ridiculous, like the ones where you have to do 360s or 180s with your car, and as you progress and do more of these tests, you are rewarded with Porsches that you can use in evolution mode. Or maybe not, as I tried using one, but the game just wouldn't let me. The environments look amazing in this game. Driving around the beautiful countryside, busy industrial sections, they put a lot of nice details to flesh out the maps. You even have Monaco in this game to drive around, where most of the circuit events happen. Also, can we have just a moment to reflect on the amazing soundtrack this game has? To be honest, this was my second time playing this game, and first time I struggled in factory mode, but this time around it was much simpler and more fun for me, and of course seeing all of the beautiful Porsches this game has to offer was amazing. I can see why a lot of fans still love and appreciate the level of detail they put into this game. Graphically, it still looks amazing for a 2000s game, each car having a pretty nice looking interior on top of it. Overall, I think it offers a really fun experience as well nowadays if you are tired of the newer games. Definitely would recommend coming back to the classics and trying them out. So that wraps up the Need for Speed history lesson. Hope you lads enjoyed this deep dive into these amazing games. And if you haven't tried them out, I hope this video helps a little bit in making that decision. Special shout out goes to the patrons that support my channel. These videos take a while to make, so I appreciate any support I get. And thank you lads for watching this video. If you are interested in other essay style videos, I have one on the black box era of Need for Speed games and the modern era Need for Speed games. Feel free to check out whichever one you prefer, and I hope you stay safe and have a wonderful day. Peace.